Morning again. So, some things have really been weighing on my heart. I addressed a little bit of it this morning, some of my health issues. I said the other day that I wasn't able to take my dog for a bike ride because of the snow, which was true. The day that it snowed, there was no chance I was getting out on those roads. I'm not overly fond of taking her out while it's muddy because it's a shortened walk. Primarily because I cannot pedal through a lot of the harder mud. There are some really large hills around here that I don't actually ride completely up. And the reason is that I cannot reach the top of the hill. I will actually get off the trike. If I have to stop part of the way through going up the hill, I will actually have to get off of the trike and push the trike the rest of the way up. The gears are all set as low as they possibly can be. I use it to make sure that my legs don't quit being useful. I don't want to lose too much of the muscle mass in my legs. Because I don't believe that this situation is unfixable. Now, I use a large walking stick. Someone asked me the other day, said that they really didn't think I'd need it. The reason I use it isn't so much that I can't walk without it, it's that if I try, I tend to fall. So I like to have it with me. I've fallen many, many times. And I have to use the stick a lot of times just to try and help myself get back up. It's never a pretty sight seeing me get up. Getting down on the ground has never been the problem. My dog at one point got so used to me using her to pull myself up that she learned how to actually brace herself. My dog's not trained in any way, shape, or form for being an assistance dog, being a service dog. She just does what she does naturally. I have actually utilized her in helping me pull things up the 4 steps that I have outside. If you haven't caught on, I do live in a camper. Everything is very close by, so I can reach it, and the chances of me falling are a lot less. But it's big enough that it gives my cat and dog space. I don't want people to think that I'm lying to them about my health. I do continually try to do things because, as I've said, I'm not yet 50. I want to be able to do things the same as I used to be. Now, as things have progressed, I went from being a trail jogger, an avid trail jogger, to then hiking and hiking trails, to now I have a lot of trouble walking. My legs go numb. As I said, my back has a lot of issues. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because I don't want someone to prey on you and say, oh, well, she's saying all this stuff, but look at what else she's saying about her health, too. She says that what she's reading is from the Bible. What I'm reading is from the Bible. What I'm telling you about my health is real. Why are these things important? Because there's enough stuff coming out in this world right now that is very untrue. It's coming out through our media for some reason, and I do not understand this. We have one side of our country that wants to, here in America, that seems to want to they seem to want to ignore, almost. They don't want anything to disturb the norms and traditions of democracy, and I understand. And then you have another side that doesn't even want to be democratic anymore. They want to make us all authoritarian. And the truth is you're right. We should treat others as we want to be treated. We should also hold our leaders very much accountable for their actions. And as it stands, we have a convicted felon as our president right now that has never once a day in his life truly had to pay for his actions. And now America is being brought low because of him. We just had a Secretary of Defense nominated that is clearly an alcoholic. And while the second wife repeatedly says there was no physical abuse in her marriage, abuse is abuse. And I will tell you that mental and emotional abuse can be just as hard of a fist as a physical fist. We have an adjudicated rapist as our president. And we have, as the Secretary of Defense, a man that was accused of rape and paid $50,000 to shut people up over it. It's not okay. The party that is in power one of the top advisors, which is the richest man in the world, to the convicted felon president, threw out the Nazi salute. Not once, but twice. There's no other way to see that other than as a complete disrespect for every American and every Jewish American or Jewish individual alive. Complete and utter disrespect. The hate that is infecting that part of America and that part of the government can no longer be dealt with through norms. They cannot be normalized. We cannot normalize that level of hate. Do not get me wrong. Michelle Obama is right. When they go low, you go high. But she did the most intelligent thing I could imagine. She made it clear, made it abundantly clear how she felt about this. She stayed home. She was not violent, not with her words, not with her actions, but she stood up and held accountable those that were going to be taking power. I want you to understand that the traditions that they held to for this inauguration were not maintained in the last inauguration. The convicted felon president could not even bring himself to meet with those traditions at the end of his term after the last time he was in power, and now he is saying that he doesn't expect he'll ever have to leave. He's saying 4 more years after these 4 years. No, 2 years is constitutional. What's he want to do? He wants to change the Constitution. No, he doesn't just want to change it. He wants to do away with it. He spent the entire campaign lying to people, saying, I don't know anything about 2025. I don't know anything about 2025, Project 2025. Never heard of it. And yet here we are, and everything he is doing is enacting Project 2025. It's not okay. Let me be the first to tell you, as an individual that worked in the electrical trade, as a union member, I worked with several different individuals of varying races, religions, and genders. And I learned something from them all, even if it was just how I didn't want to be. The fact is white and male does not necessarily make you capable of doing the job. It doesn't necessarily make you the best individual for the job. It doesn't. Sometimes your skill set doesn't even begin to touch the job needed to be done. And so, getting rid of the DEI, as they call it, is not going to, well, the other side of it is too, is that they don't even seem to understand what diversity, equity, and inclusion means. Because when you do away with the DEI hires, as they've been saying, you have to understand veterans are part of the DEI network. They're going to be losing their jobs. Veterans. We need to understand that God doesn't inspire hate. Christ never spoke of hate. Never spoke in hate. Christ was about love, peace, mercy. If those things are things that offend you, then perhaps you're not really serving the God you think you are. And you should evaluate what God you do serve. Because there's still time to turn around and go back. So long as there is breath within your body, you have the opportunity to seek forgiveness. You have the opportunity to know God more fully. You cannot do that if you are following an individual that worships themselves more than they worship God. We are going through the Old Testament and finding the many, many, many areas in which God calls out idol worship. And we will see in the New Testament where Jesus even says that there are a great many stumbling blocks to worshiping God. And one of those greatest stumbling blocks is financial wealth. We should not ever normalize hate. We should never normalize hate based on anything: religion, race, gender. Hate is not okay. And greed is just hate's best friend. Because greed says that you deserve more. Greed continually forces you to do wrong to achieve your ends. We have a lot of things going on in our nation today. And I would urge you to truly search your heart, to really listen to the Spirit of God that you have the ability to claim. And if you do claim that God is living within you, then listen up. Because I am 100% sure God wants to get to your heart and tell you that hate and greed are never along Christ's path. Those are not the ways in which we should walk. We should not normalize those things. And while we may want to ensure that our traditions continue, sometimes traditions need to be let go for a time to ensure that right is continued. To ensure that right makes its way forward. We spent 4 years with a party that did not seem to want to show any level of impartiality or have any part of it mistaken as impartiality. That was a mistake. Because if anything, we have seen that history will continually and always eventually bear out the truth. And right now we have a situation in which we're being told not even to believe what our eyes saw. January 6th of 2021. We're being told not to believe it. Why? Because the victors are trying to rewrite history. He pardoned those that are the most dangerous. He said it was okay to beat cops. It was never okay to bludgeon police officers with anything. And yet, when he pardoned these felons, he said it was. He has set himself up and maybe made it clear that he feels he can do no wrong, and that anybody that defends him is going to be doing no wrong. And I am here to tell you that is not true. He is a flawed individual, just as Samson, as we are looking at Samson right now. Flawed individual. And sometimes when we realize that God is working through someone in spite of them, it doesn't necessarily mean that God is making any changes to them. But to those that see the things that are being done by those individuals, they become galvanized in their continued belief that God is better than what is being shown by the ones that are in power right now. Do I believe that this is the individual that God wanted to be in power? No, I don't. Do I believe that God allowed it? Yes. Why? Because I truly do believe that there's about to be some great works about to happen. I also truly do believe that it was time for God's people, those that truly do follow, to stand up and proclaim the truth of the Christian faith. Because the Christian faith that is being painted by individuals that are in power right now is not the Christian faith that Christ taught. If the idea of mercy offends you, then it is not Christ that you are following. If the idea of caring for those less fortunate, then it is not. If the idea of caring for those less fortunate angers you, it's not Christ you're following. If you feel you are the only one that made you who you are, then it is not Christ you are following. God may allow it to be in power at this time, but that does not mean it is what God wanted. And that does not mean that God is not still moving in spite of what is going on. Hold on to the hope that God is at work and that this is not where we end. Hold on to the hope that there are still those that like Michelle Obama, like Alexandria AOC, that stand up and say, I am not going to empower this. Be one of them that does not empower it. Be one of them that stands against it. And those that tell you that the Bible gives them the power to do these awful things, tell them no, it doesn't. Because you've heard the word. You've read the word. Don't let someone else tell you what God. Again, we go back to this. Don't let anybody else tell you who you are or who God needs you to be in God's kingdom. Do not let that happen. And I will tell you right now, that is coming from a woman who has done her absolute best to fight God on every turn of what needed to happen in her life. Because she had a plan. I promise you, I had plans for my life, and none of them included this. I will also promise you that God has had one seriously great belly chuckle laugh out of me and my plans. We serve a great and mighty God. And we serve that great and mighty God. And we have seen over and over again, and we are not even halfway through the Old Testament at this point. And we see over and over where God is foreshadowing the coming salvation of all humanity. And it is done through a peaceful, peace-loving individual named Jesus. And I have already told you, I believe, this is me, I believe with my whole heart that we are given every opportunity, every moment, every possible last chance to know God and Christ before that silver thread is finally cut. I promise you, I do believe that God and Jesus give us another chance to know and to truly know and accept. Not some piddly little, oh yeah, I've done everything I wanted to do in my lifetime, so now I'm dying and I'm going to take Christ in. It doesn't work that way. You have to be repentant. You have to actively be seeking forgiveness. And if all you are concerned with is getting your own way, I promise you, it's not going to go well for you. As I said the other day, a really good rule of thumb to recognize when God is really at work and when it's just you is to understand that when your ego kicks in, when you sit there and, oh, I'm such a good servant, and, oh, I'm doing such a good thing, and, oh, these people should be so happy that I'm here and I'm taking care of them, that is not from God. That is your ego kicking in, and the moment that it does, you have just kicked God out. That is not to say that what you are doing isn't right, but that is to say that the path you are headed down is one that will lead you to greed, to narcissism, and to the belief that you do it all on your own. It is not of God. Just because you're handing out sandwiches to the poor does not mean that that makes you a great person. That does not mean that you are a better person than the person that you are handing the sandwich to. And take that from an individual that, again, I told you the physical problems. Now let me tell you some of the emotional. I live every day with PTSD. I had a period of my life in which it was nothing but trauma upon trauma upon trauma. Trauma from some things that happened in childhood, not by my parents, but by an individual that came to live with us, because that individual was very, very broken. And I tried to help. And in trying to help, I took on too much of their problems. And I never shared it. And that happened a couple of times with a couple different people. I've already told you my best friend, her first sexual experience was being raped, and she was then raped again later. I took on too much of that. As far as my own emotions and what built a part of who I am. And I never shared that trauma with anybody else. Then I went to live in a foreign nation where I thought I would be helping. But instead, there was so much that needed done that I could not do it all. And I felt like such a failure. I felt like I was letting God down, my family down, the people that I was working with down. I could not get away from the number of women and girls that had been raped and were dying. I couldn't get away from it. And that trauma settled on me like a brick house, weighing down my shoulders. And I carried it with me for a long time. And I can't say I really shared it with anybody. And then there was an incident with some police officers that had gone through the worst year of their life. They just didn't realize I had been through the worst year of my life. I was beaten and pulled from my vehicle. I was arrested. I had 2 full-grown men kneeling on my neck and back, while another 12 watched. I was then told I was lucky to be alive and that I shouldn't press the issue. Even when I tried to contact a pretty prominent legal group that usually handles cases like that. And then there was a massive car accident in which I was rear-ended. And I had what was called a minor traumatic brain injury. That's where the memory loss comes from. That's where the sleep problems come from. That's where, well, I've always had trust issues, but they kind of got magnified by the PTSD and the paranoia, which has all been really going well. Healing very well, primarily because my dog, as I've said, my dog, my cat, they're a very big part of that. My clinging to my independence. That is probably in a large part of the problems that I have. But I would defy any elderly individual that has been on their own for so many years that is finding that they're no longer able to do certain things and be certain ways, that I defy them to say that you should give up your independence. Most elderly people fight it too. They struggle to hold on to that independence. I cannot afford assisted living. So I do what I can. As I said, I live in a camper. It's small. There are 4 very graduated, easy steps to get up into my camper. I've learned to adjust. And through that, I have been grateful to God for all of it, because God has carried me through. Every time I thought that God was punishing me with pain or with loss, it was God carrying me. I was not there alone. No, not all Christians have to struggle. Not all Christians are going to have a rougher life. But there's one thing I've learned. And just like the homeless people that you see, that you look at and you think, oh, I must be a better Christian than them. I have so much more than they do. Or, oh, I must be a better Christian than them because I'm giving to them. I want you to understand that there are those in life that they go through the struggles that you yourself would not be capable of handling. See, there's this old saying, and people will, and it's out of the Bible, people will continually, anytime you are struggling, will come at you with, oh, God won't put more on you than you can handle. In many ways, that's true. But we still all have to learn the same lessons. And what you are capable of handling may seem like a pea under a mattress to someone else. And by that, I mean that the mattress squishes the pea, not the kind of thing that the princess ran into. Just because a person is homeless does not mean that they're less. They may be going through a struggle and be brought into your life at such a point in time for a lesson that you need to learn. But God knew that you were not able to handle the struggle of homelessness. So God brought forth into your life someone else that God could use to teach that lesson. That also, understand, does not mean that that person will be where they are forever. Jesus will tell you those that are the least will become the most, and those that have the most will have the least. That's New Testament. We're not there yet. We're still reading about the Old Testament where we don't live, but that we do need to learn. Because we need to see that from the moment the apple was bitten, well, from the moment the fruit was bitten into, and sin entered the world, God was creating a path back. to love, to peace, to joy. And that path led right straight through Jesus. And there are times in your life where you will find difficult individuals, or you will find individuals in difficult circumstances. And you will have to be able to learn from them. I know I've said this before. My dad taught it to me. You can learn something from everyone, even if it is just how you don't want to be. Recognize that just because someone is in a certain situation does not mean that they are going to be there forever. And it does not mean that you're stronger or better than them. It just means that God was able to use them differently. And their struggles allowed for your benefit. I can't necessarily tell you that I would be here right now reading God's Word had things gone the way that I had planned, or even if I was able to still drive and hike and walk. And let me tell you, I'm not yet 50. And those things hurt desperately to not be able to do. But learn from my struggle, because I'm here and I'm being used by God. And I'm asking you, seek out truth, grab it with both hands. Don't believe just whatever someone tells you. Ask the Spirit that is living within you. And by all means, ask Jesus to bring that Spirit within. And I would definitely say, if you got them to give, America definitely needs your thoughts and prayers. But more than that, America's going to need your vote. Be kind to each other and to yourself.